Hello everybody once again. After the lunch, I know that after the lunch people are a bit sleepy, but I guess that the topic what we have on the agenda will kind of help us not to be so sleepy, because the topic what we have is on our regional challenges towards the gas sector, the sector which is in the process of transformation, because in the process, since the gas is becoming or transforming from natural monopoly into the market, gas as a product is becoming little by little a commodity. We can start trading in gas based not only on energy rules, but on trade rules, on WTO rules, and this is what is indeed interesting, and other challenges. So without any delay, we will start our discussions. In the panel we have 4 speakers. Unfortunately, we missed one speaker, Minister Pavluts, Minister of Economics of Latvia, who was not in a position to come today, but nonetheless, we are going to have a discussion, and we will have a discussion, and without any delay, I would like to invite our first speaker, Mr. Mike Calvu, Director of Transmission Network Service of National Grid of United Kingdom, and I would invite speakers to have a 10-minute presentations, and then afterwards we would have a questions and answer session and a discussion one. So please think about what would you like to ask, what issues would you like to raise after the presentations will be done. Thank you very much. So please, you have a floor.
Good afternoon. I'd like to first of all say thank you very much to the Lithuanian presidency for the invite to speak today, and congratulations on hosting and organising such an impressive and important event. Today I'm going to share with you some perspectives from slightly further west than many of the speakers, from what we can learn about from the UK and our experience in developing gas infrastructure. One of the first things probably to say is National Grid, we are responsible for the onshore gas transmission system in GB. We also do electricity transmission, and though our focus will focus today on gas, many of my comments actually will be applicable to electricity as well. So if you want to talk to me about my perception on electricity, very happy to do that later over coffee. The GB regime is probably, well, is the most liquid gas market in Europe. It's been a successful market for a number of years. It operates on a daily basis with shippers and traders trading large amounts of gas. We have interconnections to Netherlands, to Belgium through pipelines. We're also linked to Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland, and we have import links to Norway. Over the past 10 to 15 years, the market's undergone considerable change. We used to be pretty well self-sufficient in gas from the North Sea and the Irish Sea. We're now approaching up to 50% of our gas being imported. And one of the key things that developed is new LNG import terminals. So we have LNG import facilities at the Isle of Grain down in the southeast corner and at Milford Haven in the southwest corner. So it's been an interesting changing regime, and the fact that we can trade gas and exchange gas between our neighbouring countries is extremely important. In terms of grid development, the big challenge that we see, and I suspect all the TSOs in both electricity and gas see, is just the fact how uncertain the future is. This uncertainty covers many dimensions. It covers demand in GB, underlying gas demand, so demand from households and industry has peaked and is starting to go down, and it's very hard to see any scenarios where gas demand underlying will go down. However, the big uncertainty overlaying that is gas for power generation. And that actually, at the transmission level, may be actually driving an increase in gas, depending on exactly how much renewables or other low-carbon generation comes on, and how much new gas-fired power stations are needed to replace the coal-fired power stations that are going to be closing, or are currently closing, and be closing shortly because of European environmental legislation. So demand is actually quite a big uncertainty, but supplies are a massive uncertainty. I mentioned the LNG terminals. When they were built, the first year, for example, when Milford Haven, the 2 terminals they were built, we saw very big gas imports and very large gas flows. Since then, with the change in the worldwide LNG market, there's very, very few LNG ships turning up at those terminals. And so suddenly we've gone from having large amounts of gas coming in at one part of the system to very small amounts, which actually, provides quite a bit of challenge. We actually have a large new 2 gigawatt gas-fired CCT down at a place called Pembroke, right next door to those LNG imports, being sited there on the basis that's where the gas is. Many days at the moment, we're challenging keeping the gas pressures up to that combined cycle gas turbine because not enough gas is coming in at that part of the network, and we're having to ship it from other parts of the network. So there is a great deal of uncertainty, and that uncertainty is challenging everything we do. In GB, we used to have most of our gas coming in from northern Scotland into St Fergus terminal, and most days it was all about the gas flowing from north to south. We're now looking forward, and as northern North Sea gas declines, we're seeing some scenarios in as little as 2 or 3 years' time when we're having to push a lot of gas north in order to meet Scottish demand and also the demand that comes from Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And that means investment. We're having to reconfigure all of our gas compressors so we can push gas north and fundamentally change our system to be much more flexible. What all of this uncertainty means is that stakeholder engagement is just massively important. You can't develop your network without really engaging all your stakeholders to find out what's needed. National Grid basically now does full year-round stakeholder engagement around such things as our future energy scenarios. So we'll run one big set piece event a year where we present our analysis. We would normally have 300 or 400 people in the room, and it's standing room only at the moment. It's such a big, important event. But then there's the whole year-round cycle of bilateral meetings with individual parties, written consultations, web consultations, workshops. So this stakeholder consultation on just effectively what are the scenarios that we use for planning our gas and electricity system is a massive undertaking. Based on those scenarios, we then do our network planning. That goes into our 10-year statement, and that always then feeds into the ENTSO-E and ENTSO-G network development plans for the whole of Europe. So massive amounts of stakeholder consultation, which we think then gives us really robust data and scenarios in which to plan our network. Stakeholder engagement is also really important once we actually want to build projects. Public engagement and understanding of why we need infrastructure is extremely important, whether we're trying to build electricity overhead lines or HVDC links or new gas pipelines. Most people don't want the gas pipelines or to be anywhere near where they are. Normally they understand the need for the infrastructure, but they let the infrastructure be somewhere else. And getting people to understand why it has to go somewhere, and that somewhere may mean putting it, close to where they live, is an issue. We have to do large amounts of public engagement as part of our planning consenting rules. We already have effectively a one-stop shop for consenting, but the quid pro quo, in return for that, we have to do this large amount of public consenting, and that takes time. So we believe at the moment in the UK it takes 6 to 7 years to consent a new gas pipeline, despite the fact the actual consenting authority will take their decision with only 1 year. It takes that long because of all the public engagement we have to do. So in terms of delivering grid investments, there's a number of things that need to come together. The key thing is we need to understand our customer needs. It's very easy to come up with a plan and say we need, build a pipeline from A to B or from here to here. But fundamentally, customer needs are evolving, so our plans have to evolve and develop. We have to understand the implications of security supply and system flexibility. There are some particular challenges. Permitting is one of the big areas. The streamlined permitting of PCI sounds welcome, but effectively in GB I already have most of those arrangements in place, and it's still a massive challenge. So I think it's a step forward, but we shouldn't underestimate just how big a challenge that public engagement will be. Also, a particular issue for GB is just really understanding who is actually responsible. If we run a European-wide network development process and we identify we need some more cross-border capability, National Grid actually is only responsible for the onshore transmission networks. So the separate pipelines to Netherlands and Belgium are owned by separate organisations. So if we need to build more capacity, who's actually got the fundamental obligation? And actually trying to work that out is something that's a bit unclear in all these European regulations. Fundamentally, our regulatory framework needs to work, and we have a regulatory framework based around users giving user commitment to investments. So we know that when we do go ahead with our investments, they will be based on actually what our customers or user system need. So, my conclusions are, any decision-making process around infrastructure has to be based on stakeholder engagement and consideration of multiple future energy scenarios. It's really important we get on and we build the infrastructure required, but we do have to build the right infrastructure because customers aren't willing to pay for infrastructure that ultimately turns out to be not needed. So getting it right is important, and that means you do have to understand future uncertainty. Certainly from a GB perspective, we'd really like a bit more clarity on exactly who's responsible for cross-border incremental capacity. This is probably a more active debate in electricity and gas, but it can certainly apply in both. And it's really important to make sure the PCI process is successful and that we adopt best practices all across Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Polish gas transmission operator will be represented by Mr. Rafał Wittmann. So, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very glad to be here, and I have this opportunity to share the Polish concerns and Polish point of view on the regional development and the projects of common interest which are important for this regional development. In my presentation, I would like to give you a brief introduction about the gas system, what the company is and what the company is dealing with, and then a few words about the strategy priorities regarding the development of the investment on the infrastructure in Poland. And then a few words also about the probably most important and most interesting for you project which will connect Polish and Lithuanian gas systems, or which may connect, of course, if it is realized. And then a few words as a summary. So, gas system was established in 2004 as the effect of the ownership, as the unbundling process, which was according to the gas directive, and then since 2004, company was running its business as a fully ownership unbundled company, and it's probably one of the few examples of the fully ownership unbundled companies operators in Europe. We manage the flows, the gas flows in the entire domestic system in Poland, and we are also the operator of the Polish section of the Yamal pipeline, which delivers gas from Russia through Poland to Germany. As the TSO, we are not only responsible for the operation, for the current day-to-day operation of the system, but we are also responsible for the long-term, for the preparation of the long-term investment plans, network development plans, and also, if we are lucky, for the implementation of some projects which may find a good background for making the investment decision. We operate a system which has around 10,000 kilometers of the network of the high-pressure pipelines in Poland, and we generate a profit of around roughly 70 million euro annually. We are transporting around 15 billion cubic meters of gas for the Polish customers, And we also transport gas to the neighboring countries, including Ukraine. In 2012, we started transportation of gas to Ukraine. Ukraine was interested in having some deliveries, some gas delivered from Poland. So this allowed us to increase the efficiency of the network and to increase the utilization of our network. So today we are implementing a huge, intensive development investment plan in Poland. We are just developing the interconnectors, we are developing the LNG terminal, and so far we managed to establish a part of the current investment plan, which is going to end up in the next year. So the investment which we managed to complete was the construction of the first north-south interconnector in the region, which connected Polish and Czech transmission systems. And this pipeline is in operation since 2012 and is used quite intensively by the shippers, by the users. Then we managed to modernize a part of system in southwestern part of Poland, which allowed us to increase the capacity of the last of interconnection point, which is on the Polish and German border. And last, but not least, we also managed to implement the virtual reverse flow at the Yamal pipeline at Malnov interconnection point, which added some additional import capacity of roughly 2.3 billion cubic meters a year based on the interruptible basis. Altogether, we managed to increase the import capacity to Poland by around 3 billion, more than 3 billion cubic meters a year during the last few years, and this corresponds to roughly more than 30% of the total import capacity installed in Poland. Now we are also preparing the new system development plan for the next 10 years. And this plan comprises 3 time horizons. The first time horizon is 2014, which is dedicated to the completion of the currently developed investments. And this includes the LNG terminal in Świnoujście, which should be completed by the end of next year and should add 5 billion cubic meters of import capacity to Poland. Then we are also planning to build around 1,000 kilometers of high-pressure transmission pipelines in northwestern part of Poland and in central Poland. And we also plan to implement the physical reverse flow at Malnov interconnection point, and this will add additional 5 billion cubic meters of firm reverse capacity from Germany to Poland. So in the end of 2014, the supply situation for Poland should change quite significantly. But we are going to continue the investments because we are operating the system which is relatively old. Some of the pipelines have more than 40 years of being in operation, so we need to modernize the system, we need to replace the pipelines. And this will be located mostly in western and southern part of Poland. You can see the blue color. These are the new investment plans in the next time horizon, which is the time between 2014 and 2018. And this investment plan for the next 5 years also comprises the new interconnector between Poland and Czech Republic, which should deliver the bidirectional transmission capacity and should ensure that the gas can be transported both directions at more or less the same level of 5-6 billion cubic meters a year, if of course needed and required by the customers. Then we also plan to have the interconnector between Poland and Slovakia in the southern part of Poland, which should supplement and complete the north-south interconnection projects in this part of Europe, in the Central and Eastern Europe, particularly related to Poland, and should deliver also the import and export capacity, so both directions, gas can be transported both directions, will give us the access to the southern sources of gas, and also Slovakia and Hungary in the south can have the access to Polish LNG terminal. Then we have the third time horizon, which is between 2019 and 2023. And this will be the completion of the modernization of the system in Poland, in the eastern part of Poland, and also should enable the connection of the Central and Eastern Europe and the Baltic States region. So we can see the Polish-Lithuanian interconnector, which should be completed in the third time horizon. But of course, it doesn't mean that it will be completed in 2022. It can be, of course, completed earlier if they are just favorite background environment for making the investment decision for this project. The list of projects of common interest has been adopted and announced on the 14th of October. And there's a number of projects which are listed on the list and which are related to the development of the Polish transmission system. So these are the projects related to western and eastern route of the north-south corridor running through Poland. And these are the pipelines related to the north-south interconnection concept. And we also have, okay, I have to speed up. So, and we also have the 4 projects which are related to the Baltic Energy Market Interconnection Plan. And among these projects, there's an interconnection between Poland and Lithuania. Regarding the project themselves, so the LNG terminal construction ongoing and should be completed by the end of next year. The Polish-Czech interconnector is at the preparatory phase. We believe that the project could be completed as early as in 2018. Then we have Polish-Slovak interconnector, which it's also after feasibility study phase. We are now just launching pre-engineering works for this project. And we believe this project could be completed in around 2018-2019. Polish-Lithuanian interconnector, we believe that the earliest possible time for completion is around 2019. The capacity of the pipeline, the initial capacity is 2.4 billion cubic meters of gas annually delivered to Lithuania and other Baltic states. The capacity can be increased later on if there is a demand for a larger capacity. The project which will connect the Poland and Lithuania will not only serve the Lithuania as the individual beneficiary country, but we also deliver the benefits to the other countries, to all the Baltic states. This includes, of course, Latvia and Estonia. And it's hard now to judge what will be the benefits for Finland, because Finland is not physically connected to this region. But there's also the project prepared by Finns, which will connect Finland and Estonia. So maybe in the future there will also be some effects from this project to Finland. Anyway, we have prepared, together with Amber Grid, the Lithuanian transmission system operator, the cost-benefit analysis of this project. And I can inform you that we also managed to prepare the investment request according to the regulation of the Trans-European Energy Networks. And last week we submitted the investment request to the national regulatory authorities in Poland, Lithuania, Estonia and Latvia. So we believe that now the discussion can be commenced, and hopefully, as we heard at the beginning in the morning, hopefully some agreement and compromise or consensus can be found. So there will be not only a discussion, but maybe also a solution for this. So, but of course, we believe that there's a long way ahead of us. Just a discussion with the TSOs, with the other stakeholders, with the national regulatory authorities, with the governments, just to agree on how to ensure the investment background, the background for the investment decision for this project. The project will cost a lot, more than 500 million euro. And we believe that there's also a need. Might be also a need to finance this project from the European Commission through the Connecting Europe Facility instrument. So summarizing this project, the information about the project, of course, it will, once built, it will deliver many effects which will support the development of the integrated energy market. Particularly in this part of Europe, this will end isolation of the Baltic states from the European market, from the European energy market. But of course, there are some challenges which will need to be faced, and some problems which will need to be resolved. First of all, the regional character, regional nature of the project has to be recognized by all the countries here, and of course, all the countries have to find the consensus about the project, about being involved in the project. We know from the experience that each of the countries here in the region has its own idea has its own solution, how to deliver the projects, the investment project, how to resolve the diversification problem, and how to invest, what to invest in. So if there's no consensus on GIPL project, which is this gas interconnector Poland-Lithuania, then of course it will be hard to find the favorite atmosphere and the background for the investment. The second thing is the investment, the financing itself. The project costs a lot, so it's rather unlikely that the Baltic states will be able to finance this project. So probably the financing from the European Commission will be required, and of course the financing will depend on the financing scheme that will finally be adopted by the European Commission. There are many doubts currently about how the financing will work itself in the future. And the last thing, which is also not less important, is of course just ensuring that the investment process will go smoothly. So this is of course recognized by the regulation. Regulation actually proposes certain solutions for the investment process, how to make the process smoother. But of course, this will also require the implementation of this regulation into the national law, and this may also take some time. So of course, the governments will also have some tasks to fulfill just to make the investment process smooth. Thank you for now. Sorry, I extended the time.
Thank you very much for such an informative presentation. In fact, me personally, I was impressed, and I was thinking what Mr. Philip Lowe or Jean-Arnaud Vinoy, European Commission, are thinking about this. But in fact, everything what was planned 4 years ago, now it's already a concrete project of the stakeholders, of the companies. So you should feel very, very kind of fine and relaxed that, you know, indeed what was planned, now it is already implemented. And it is a kind of an example, you know, independent and fully unbundled, and plans for interconnections, you see, for the decade and for. So indeed very kind of a good example of what is planned in Brussels. It is developing into concrete projects. Now I would like to invite Mr. Wim Ruwendijk to present us the insight from the European perspective and from Dutch perspective, the Vice President of Gas Infrastructure Europe. Please.
Thank you very much to the Lithuanian presidency for having the opportunity to speak at this high-level conference. And I will try to keep my comments brief to allow some time for discussion and questions afterwards. But I would like to offer some words of introduction just to clarify our position. And when I say our position, that is the position of Gas Infrastructure Europe, which is a Brussels-based association representing the European gas infrastructure operators. So that's transmission system operators, storage system operators, and LNG terminal operators. And we have some 69 members spread over 25 European countries. Now, this panel considers regional challenges towards 2020 for gas. And I would say, well, we don't have to wait for 2020. We are already in very challenging times. As you know, there is much pressure on gas, the gas in the energy mix. And it seems that the role of gas and the role of gas infrastructure is changing. Not only with respect to the pure volumes of gas, and we have seen some decline, but there are also specific challenges with respect to the capacity. And this, of course, is something that very much concerns the infrastructure operators. And these challenges with respect to capacity arise due to the increasing flexibility required in support of the intermittent renewables. So on the one hand, we need to have a large amount of capacity available. in case sun doesn't shine, wind doesn't blow. You need the capacity, at least as a backup. But at the same time, this capacity isn't used very often. And this, of course, has an obvious impact on the economics. Now, there were some specific questions raised to this panel, and let me briefly reflect on these questions. And the first question was, what are the challenges for grid development, particularly in the area of permit granting procedures, regulatory frameworks and financing conditions? Now, of course, as gas infrastructure operators, we do face complex authorization procedures at several levels, the local level, the regional level, the national level. And we also have to deal often with local opposition, and I think Mike described it very well, the kind of NIMBY effects. Everyone may want it and is convinced that it is needed, but not in my backyard. The energy infrastructure package, of course, proposes some improvements in this area. For example, to improve the permit granting procedure. For example, a one-stop shop at the national level and a time limit of 3.5 years from the start of the permit granting procedure until a comprehensive decision is taken. And this will, in particular, facilitate the cross-border projects which have parallel processes in 2 or more of the member states. And we hope, and we are reasonably confident, that this will indeed improve matters. But of course, it is a little bit early. We need to see all these things getting implemented and getting into force. One caveat, perhaps, by designating these priority projects, we have to avoid, of course, the situation that for those projects who do not get the PCI status, that they will not be regarded as somehow as second-class projects, which, because they're not important, they're now unimportant. And realization could maybe take twice as long. So they're not second-class projects, they're also important projects, which still need to go through all the approval procedures. Then regarding the regulatory framework, a well-known point of view from the infrastructure operators is that we would like to see a very clear and predictable regulatory framework, ensuring a fair remuneration commensurate with the risks involved. And sometimes we hear that infrastructure operators are very risk-averse. But of course, you have to keep in mind that with the kind of returns, the regulated returns that are allowed, you cannot afford to take much risk at all. So it's always a balance between risk and reward. And on top of that, of course, infrastructure operators do face very long depreciation times, sometimes as long as 50 years. And that in a market which may experience significant shifts over the next decades. And this goes to show that there is still an obvious inconsistency between the targets as expressed in the energy policy and the regulatory parameters that we encounter in our day-to-day business. Then financing conditions. Well, financing conditions for gas infrastructure, they suffer from the uncertain future of gas. And industry and financial markets would expect more clarity from policymakers. The current uncertainty introduces risk, and if you introduce risk, then you increase the cost of capital and increase the cost of the investments that we need to make. Another question was, have measures been taken at the national level to address these challenges? Well, the recently adopted regulation on guidelines for trans-European energy infrastructure is, of course, expected to trigger measures at the national level, but I think at this moment it's a little bit too early to say if and how these will work in practice. Then what are the most urgent steps to be taken next to ensure that necessary grid investments are realized at the national and at the EU level? In our view, as GIE, policymakers should first and foremost offer some further clarification of the role of gas and gas infrastructure in the future European energy policy. And this would facilitate the financing for the necessary grid investments, but according to market demand and market-based mechanisms, which we believe are still the most efficient and the most effective. In addition, stable, predictable regulatory framework in line with energy policy should ensure this fair remuneration for the regulated infrastructure operators. And it should clearly establish the allocation of costs as well as risks between the network users, the end users, and the infrastructure operators. Now, the final question that was posed to us was how different natural gas price policies impact competitiveness and development of gas infrastructure, e.g. the linkage between gas and oil prices. Well, we are infrastructure operators. We do not trade or supply gas molecules. So GIE in itself does not have a position on gas prices, but of course we are very much affected by it. And we all know prices in the European Union at the moment are much higher than in the US because of the shale gas revolution there. This has an obvious effect on the competitiveness of European industry and results in streams of cheap coal coming from the US to Europe, pushing out gas in the energy mix. On the other hand, gas prices in the EU are lower than in Asia, which means that LNG is not coming to Europe, but is flowing to Asia instead. And this has meant that a lot less LNG has entered into Europe. From 2011 to 2012, it was a drop of 27% in LNG imports. In the first 8 months of 2013, another drop of 26%. And at the moment, the average utilization of the European LNG import terminals has dropped to just above 20%. And this goes to show that global developments and gas prices can and do, in fact, have a major impact on the gas infrastructure. So I'll leave my comments at this and look forward to your questions and the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So now I would like to invite Mr. Dalius Misiūnas, the CEO of Lietuvos Energija. Please.
Thank you. I will try to beat the record, 0 slides. And also I'll try to be very brief. To begin with, thank you very much all the other speakers for giving a very good view of how the things are at the moment. And for me, the task is easier since I am not the gas person myself, not experienced gas person myself. I represent a national energy company that is producing, supplying, and distributing electricity. And I will try to illustrate the challenges from the perspective of a gas consumer and also from the perspective of a new entrant to the gas supply market that hopefully our company will be doing within the next few years. I would say that there are 3 biggest challenges when I look at the gas market, a regional gas market. And first of them is the market architecture itself. How is the market built and how is the market changing over the last few years here in the Baltics? I think we are going through a period of really big changes. One name which is probably known for all of you is a third package that is being implemented. And of course, one thing is to say third package has to be here. Another thing is to do it and to actually implement it so it works. And one of the bigger challenges here is changing the culture or changing the perception of the participants in the market towards how it should be working in the future with magic things such as third-party access, infrastructure pricing, swap contracts, or reverse flow. I myself had a pleasure of trying to enter European market in buying gas for the use for our power production. And believe me, reverse flow is something that is very well known in Netherlands or UK or even Poland, but not very well known in other neighboring countries around here, not even in Lithuania. So this, of course, puts a challenge and has to be resolved to guarantee a well-functioning market. A second challenge I would put as infrastructure, and especially regional infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure, it's not only pipes and compressor stations that we see. First of all, especially here in Lithuania and the Baltics, and the picture from the Polish colleague was very good for that, with local production being zero in all three countries. First of all, infrastructure for us means diversity and security of supply. As you know, we are still dependent on the single source, physical source, and of course we have gas and we can buy it, but still this is not the perfect situation with no second supply, no possibility to choose, or even we don't really feel the 100% security of the supply. So as you know, in terms of Lithuania, we have two major projects that are currently being executed to diversify the supply. First of them is Lng Terminal, and the second one is Lithuanian and Polish gas interconnection. The second purpose of infrastructure, in my view, is also the increase of competition. And this is where I go to the third challenge that I identify, and that is the pricing. I think we are in a very, in a way, historical moment where we are trying to understand and answer ourselves what is better, a long-term contract with a nice formula, or a short-term trading on spot market. What is better, to have a oil-connected formula or oil-dependent formula, or to have a index, the gas-to-gas index connected formula? And of course, here in Lithuania, we so far can only have the theoretical discussions about it, because in reality we are still dependent on a long-term contract, and we are still dependent on an oil-heavy formula. However, and I refer to the first presentation made here, I think the answer is in flexibility. The mistake that we can make is jump from one side to another and expose ourselves too much to the market, that at certain moments can be in a situation where we are not getting the result that we would expect in the beginning. So these three issues, for me, as a customer and consumer of gas, and also as someone who is trying to do some trading of gas, are the biggest ones. And I will finish here to save some time for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have nice time for a discussion. The floor is open for asking questions, to put forward your remarks, observations, insights, please. is, okay. Would you be so kind to introduce yourself also? Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Esa Hermelä, Finland. Just a technical remark. So, in one of the slides, so 3 Baltic energy islands were mentioned. Quite often it's forgotten, so that the biggest single energy island in natural gas is Finland. Thank you.
A remark. So yes, it's about islands. Yes, by the way, we are on EU energy island. You just yes, and now all of us, we are on EU energy island. Okay, okay, more questions? Okay, I have a question then, if I will benefit of being in the chair. No, indeed, I was impressed by our Polish colleague presentation, and you know, when we've looked at the slides, it's indeed impressive. And impressive what I said, independent and completely unbundled, and now in the process of interconnection and big plans to be further interconnected. You know, this period of transformation, you know, it's one of the difficult most period, you know, to go through that and to arrive to the situation where you are now. You know, would you a bit elaborate on lessons learned and, you know, advice, you know, how would be easier to go through? And, you know, one thing and another thing, to your opinion, what are the criteria, you know, what you would define of being independent, you know, and being, you know, what is important, independent, and maybe, if I may say so, you know, depoliticized? Please.
Well, I said we are fully unbundled, but I haven't said that we are depoliticized. Because now, of course, in 2004, when the company was established, we were first the 100% daughter company of the Polish oil and gas company, which is the company which until now is present in the production, storage, distribution and trading business. Then after 1 year, we became independent of this company, but we became the company which belonged to the Ministry of Treasury. So we are a fully state-owned company, and when I said we are fully ownership unbounded, I really meant this, because even this year we changed the minister who is controlling our company. Because formerly it was the Minister of Treasury, and the same minister actually just controlled the Polish oil and gas company. And some lawyers said that because we are under control of one minister, we are not fully unbundled. So this year we also changed the minister. Now we are controlled by the Minister of Economy. So there are 2 different ministers, and now it seems that we are. But the lessons learned, and just of course it is. Well, the process at the very beginning was very difficult, because actually we were established as a company which didn't have any assets, because the assets still belonged to our former mother company, and the assets were transferred to gas system for a certain period for 5 years. And then of course when we received the assets, we were able to prepare quite ambitious investment plans, and of course just to invest in the system. At the very beginning, we only had a budget of roughly 27 million zloty, as far as I remember, just for the operation of the company, and we didn't have any chance to make any serious investment plans, and this was of course a very bad beginning for the company. But now we are we own the entire transmission assets in Poland, and now it is much easier to prepare some plans. Of course, there's a great uncertainty regarding the investment plans. What should we do? And just what we should invest first, because we have limited profits that we generate on the assets, and we have the old assets. And of course, we need to implement the diversification policy, the integration with the European market policy. But at the same time, we also need to replace the pipelines which have been in operation for more than 40 years and 50 years. So this is a really hard task that we have at the moment, and this is the really strong discussion that we have with the national regulatory authority. So maybe because we are a state-owned company, I don't know, maybe just it's a guess, maybe it is easier to discuss about it should be easier to discuss about the tariff, about what is needed for the system, about the potential increase of the tariff, just to be able to invest or to complete all the investments. But this is only theory, because on the other hand, it is just quite easy to push us back with our ambitious plans and say, okay, no, the tariff cannot be increased for certain reasons, and you should just cut your costs down. So I think that the situation is quite similar to the other TSOs. So we have the same problem with cost-cutting policy of the regulatory authority, and of course with ambitious investment plans, which are meant to fulfill certain ideas and certain, let's say, political tasks as well. So it's not easy today, but we are just trying to prepare what we are able to finance within the next 5-10 years.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. More questions? Yes, I see over here. Yes, please.
Thank you, Simon Blakey from Eurogas. I'd just like to express a lot of sympathy with the Lietuvos Energia speaker about how to establish diversity and security and a good commercial condition for gas contracting. But Lithuania, of course, is not the only European country that is at the end of one single pipe from one single supplier. Both Greece and Finland, historically, were in exactly the same position, single pipe, about the same sort of size of market. And each of them has found a perfectly satisfactory solution. In Finland, I think the Finnish colleague would confirm, every customer is able to switch from gas to another source of energy in the event of an interruption, and that gives commercial leverage and technical security. And in Greece, there's an LNG terminal that's relatively rarely used, but it can be used in emergency and provides commercial diversification. Now, Finnish and Greek customers have been secure and had commercial leverage for, in the Finnish case, 1/3 of a century, in the Greece case, for 1/4 of a century. Lithuania, really, you have the option to go either the Greek way or the Finnish way. You don't need to do both. The Greeks can't switch all their fuels, and the Finns don't have an LNG terminal, but both are secure and have commercial leverage. The challenge, of course, is that those systems were built under a single state-owned, bundled operation, and the costs could be socialized. Lithuania now is in the position where you have an unbundled, in principle competitive market to introduce something that is possibly not solvable by competitive methods, given the evidence that we have from other countries. So my question is, are you and your authorities looking at ways of socializing the necessary options to be able to introduce a physical system that would give you the diversity and the commercial leverage that you need?
Okay.
Thank you for the question. I think relevant examples, and Lithuania's national strategy says that we need to have diversified supply, and the first mean for that is LNG. Now, regarding the LNG terminal, regarding the socializing of the cost, I think this is very heavy debate has been over the last couple of years, where infrastructure costs are actually being socialized or being put into tariff, both for pipeline infrastructure development and also for the time being for LNG terminal. And of course, this idea or this strategy is not popular for all the participants, and being challenged and being questioned a lot. But I think looking at the market perspective, there is a certain homework or a certain investment that has to be done, that has to be made in order to create a potential for a competition in the market. If we would expect things to be built or developed on a purely competitive basis, we might stay in the same situation where we are. So I think from the customer's point of view, although it might increase the tariff in the short run, in the long run is socializing the cost of infrastructure is a good strategy.
Thank you. Yes, please. Mm-hmm.
It's not a question, it's just an update on Greece that was mentioned earlier. We actually have two pipelines coming into Greece. There is one coming from the north, which brings most of the gas, but there is one more coming from east. So there is the Greece-Turkey interconnector operating since a few years already, importing some of our gas. And also the LNG terminal is widely used, about a quarter of the amount used last year from this terminal, were more than 50% by third parties, by private entities, not the state-owned gas company. And I should also update that our TSO, gas TSO, is in the process of being privatized. Actually, it has been already, the process has been completed, and it is now under the scrutiny of the European Commission for regulatory approval. So we are in the process of having it fully unbundled. Before we had the ITO model. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please, one more remark. Another island, you know, it's a period of islands.
For taking the floor again, but so I think so perhaps it would be important to, when we speak about security of supply, on one hand, to speak about the physical security of supply. On the other hand, also, let's call it economical security of supply. How to make the natural gas market competitive. Because there are major differences if one compares, for example, the Benelux countries or UK, where there are several sources of supply of pipeline gas plus LNG. And then, on the other hand, so-called pipeline Europe, where the structure is monopolistic. And so there are two elements, physical security of supply, economical security of supply, and most often it helps the discussion if we know what we speak about and which side of the coin we stress more than the other. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe I will benefit asking the last question. I would like to ask the question of our UK colleague and Dutch colleague. What was underlined, especially in UK presentation, the involvement of the stakeholders. And indeed, this is very important because without stakeholders, the projects would not be in a position to be developed. But, you know, relationship between stakeholders and the governments, it's quite sensitive and delicate issue. You know, where are the interests of the stakeholder, where are the interests of the country, or security of supply, or European interests. So my question would be for you, you know, because you are from the countries, what you would be able to answer and to explain, you know, your insight or your advice for the governments or your advice for European Commission, you know, what could be done better to improve the relationship between stakeholders and the governments? Maybe start from you.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of stakeholders involved in the industry. There are a lot of interested parties. Anybody making major investments, whether it's in LNG terminals or long-term gas supply contracts, needs certainty. And the more constructive dialogue that can happen between governments, between industry parties, the better. I talked about our scenarios. One interesting thing about our future energy scenarios is they are based on stakeholder input, the government is one of those stakeholders, but they're not the only stakeholder. And in actual fact, the government doesn't always like our scenarios because they don't necessarily show that government policy is being fully implemented to the timescales that they would like it to be. That's, that's our stakeholders saying they think there'll probably be some slippage in practice. And I've had a few, interesting, robust debates with my government around whether those scenarios are right or not. And, and saying, well, yeah, but that's what the industry is saying. That's what the stakeholders are saying. So I think the important thing to say is you need to create the mechanisms and the forums. We thought 5 years ago we were doing a lot of stakeholder involvement. We're probably doing 10 times the amount we are since 5 years ago. You just need more opportunities, both multilateral and bilateral discussions. And, and even though we're relatively well interconnected, gas security supply is a big concern. We have a well-functioning market, but the concern is that many of our market participants are relying on the market and aren't actually necessarily investing in physical options. So we're having a big debate on gas security supply and does the government need to do anything more about promoting, for example, more gas storage in the UK? Recently, they've decided that at the moment they don't believe that's necessary, but that debate is probably one that will run and run.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Groenendijk, please.
Very well done. Well, the energy infrastructure package has proposed the concept of the one-stop shop for permitting procedures. The Netherlands has had that for some years. It's called, in translation, the state coordination ruling, where significant projects within the Netherlands, infrastructural projects, can be declared to be of a national interest. And this means that the state level can overrule any local objections. You have to be extremely careful with that instrument, I think, because whereas it can be used to take away local obstacles, it cannot be used to take away the local resistance and the local opposition. Which means that if you're unlucky, you're actually creating more resistance and burden the next project with that than you have taken away. So the real solution there is not so much, I think, in these formalistic procedures, but to achieve a real dialogue with the stakeholders and try to work out solutions that all parties can accept and ultimately be happy with.
Okay. Thank you very much. So that was the message of the stakeholders for the governments, for European Commission. Indeed, what is important, it's a dialogue. It is important to agree, on the directions, on the policy lines, what we should implement, and try to avoid of politicizing separate projects. What's, I should admit, rather often what's happening in my own country, in Lithuania. Sometimes we are concentrating on the project, kind of arriving to the situation that the project indeed is only an instrument in implementing the policy line. So if we would agree, the stakeholders and the governments on the very clear policy lines, then implementation of the projects would be a cake, a piece of the cake. So thank you very much. Thank you for your participation. Now it's a coffee break. Thank you.